Texas lawmakers are revisiting their congressional maps in a rare mid-decade review, looking to redraw their lines in favor of Republicans in the state. Ali Rogan has more on the controversial fight that could have a major impact on future elections. Ali?
Now, redistricting typically happens at the beginning of the decade after the release of new census data, but President Trump has urged leaders in the state to restructure their maps in an attempt to maintain Republican control of the U.S. House. In a statement, the Republican Party of Texas praised the move, saying it is, quote, an essential step to preserving GOP control in Congress. But some residents have pushed back at hearings regarding the proposed district lines.
How about we all stop allowing ourselves to be treated like pawns? Reject this attempt by Trump to serve and protect himself at your expense.
For more on the Lone Star State's redistricting battle and the impact it could have on next year's midterms, I'm joined now by Abby Livingston of Puck. Abby, thank you so much for being here. The legislature last drew its map just a few years ago. Why is President Trump asking them to do it again now?
Well, the people who drew the map in 2021 were actually Texas Republicans, and they drew a map that would prevent any sort of competitive races in the state and that would bolster all of the incumbents. And Donald Trump and many other Republicans in Washington saw room to give. And so they directed Texas Republicans to redraw the map in a much more aggressive way in order to bolster Republicans next year in the midterms.
And what are the differences between the current map, which was drawn in 2021, and the new proposed map?
The biggest difference is several Democrats are going to have a very hard path for reelection. 4 Democrats were drawn in the same, there's 2 pairs of Democrats in 2 districts where they may have to run against each other. These are very painful types of races for the Democratic Party, but it also frees up districts where Republicans can win.
Now, Governor Abbott of Texas initially resisted this push, but came under some pressure from President Trump's political team. What does that say about President Trump's influence right now? And what kind of precedent does this set for redistricting fights all over the country?
I think this shows Donald Trump's total domination of the party from the top to the bottom. When I first heard of this, I was very surprised, and some of my Republican sources were very surprised he was moving forward on this. But that is one of the #1 takeaways of this beyond the actual political repercussions.
And as you just mentioned, some of those specific seats, 5 seats across major metropolitan areas and South Texas, many of them are majority Hispanic. If Republicans do succeed in flipping those, how could that shift the national balance of power in the lead up to the 2026 midterm elections?
Democrats right now are expected to have a headwind behind them as they head into the midterms. But if they take losses in Texas, that will make it that much more difficult. It could also ram up the prices of running congressional campaigns in Texas on the handful of ones that are still competitive.
And we know that some Democratic governors, Gavin Newsom in California, Kathy Hochul in New York, Phil Murphy in New Jersey, are also considering pushing for new maps in their states. If Texas does go through with this, are we going to see a full-blown redistricting arms race around the country?
I think that's already happening. When I talk to Democrats in Texas, but also outside of Texas, even the most institutionalist-minded Democrats are ready to fight this fight. Texas Republicans did this in 2003, and there was almost no fanfare. This is a completely different political war that we're watching right now.
And there are some Republican governors elsewhere who are also considering these moves in Missouri, Florida, other states could follow. Are Democratic states going to be able to keep up with this if it really does become a pattern, given that the president's support of it is so strong? And which party do you think is going to benefit the most from these moves in the long run?
I think for right now, the Republicans have the advantage in that many Democratic states have more restrictions on redistricting mid-decade or how you implement it. There are aims for bipartisan commissions. And so Texas alone is a very simple process and makes it much more easier to do that. Now, on the flip side, if Democrats do have a wind at their back, they can take a little bit more risks than the Republicans can when they're redrawing their maps.
And of course, we've seen Democrats and constituents showing a lot of outrage about these plans. Can this be a voting issue for Democrats around the country as an issue in 2026?
I think that's absolutely happening in Texas. We are seeing big turnout at the hearings around the redistricting. It's a focal point for organizing, and we are seeing the national party push this elsewhere. Hakeem Jeffries went to Texas this week, and so I think there will be a full-blown emphasis on this process over the next 2 years.
Abby Livingston of Puck, thank you so much for breaking this down for us.
Thanks for having me.